What's going on, Military Cashflow family? Today's a great day. It's like pretty much my last week here at Fort Stewart, so I'm really excited about it. I'm looking forward to moving up to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, so I'll be in that area. If you're listening and you're in the area, shoot me a note. Just hit me up on social media, and I'll respond back. If you want to get together and have lunch or something like that, I don't know. I'm new to the area, so I'm just really hyped up about seeing something different is all. So with that, today we have a great guest, Gervon Simon, and he is in Washington, Washington State, and he's a West Point football player. And he bought a home with his dad, did some flips, got his license, and then started crushing it as an agent. Started building a team. We talked through a lot of things. We talked through what the transition was like for him, what it was like for him to build his team, lessons learned through all of these things. So I'm going to keep this one really sweet and simple. You guys aren't going to want to miss this episode. Stay tuned and let's get into it. What's going on, Military Cashflow family? Today we got a great guest, Gervon Simon. On today. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. I'm really excited to hear your story, man. We got a West Point football player in the house, man. Would you mind letting us know a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're at, and what you're doing in the real estate space?
Of course, yeah. First and foremost, thank you for having me on. Been a long time fan, so it was pretty cool whenever you responded to my DM, and we got up on the show. But yeah, my name is Gervon Simon. I'm originally from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, born and raised. I got recruited to play football at West Point. At the time, I had no intentions to join the military, but that obviously quickly changed once I accepted the opportunity to go to West Point. I played football there for 4 years and commissioned as an officer, and I med boarded out a little bit early before my commitment was up, and I got into real estate. I first started out investing, and I was just super hungry for it, and then once I got to almost immediately after I got here, stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Tacoma, I got my real estate license and became a broker. Honestly, things just happened really quick and it just took off.
Nice. Okay. So that's pretty much the synopsis, man. Let's go ahead and dig into it a little bit. So let's start at the beginning. What was your, I guess, upbringing around like money and real estate? Like what was it like for you?
Well, my upbringing around money, like I really had no knowledge of it really at all. Honestly, like I was born in the projects where I'm from. Not a lot of people are financially literate, and it has, there's not really an environment conducive for growth, especially in the Black community where I'm from. So it was a little bit tough. But once I got to school, my eyes opened to a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different things, and real estate being one of them. I was always really interested in understanding, how to invest and all that, but I never really understood it, and I never really knew where to start. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which everybody says gives a lot of credit to, but it rightfully so. So for me, when I read it, it was really eye opening, and then it set me down a path of real estate, and then I started just digging in the deep, bigger pockets. I really dug into, or I read a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. And I mean, that book was like really like it was like an encyclopedia, and it gave me all the information I was looking for. And then from there, I just really dug in deep and just kept going forward and to the point to where I'm at now.
That's crazy, man. So, you said you grew up in an environment that wasn't, that didn't like, give you a lot of financial literacy, or didn't have a lot of people around you with financial literacy. And you said school is what kind of, I guess, turned that light on for you. Obviously the books and the things like that. But when you said school, do you mean high school or you mean West Point?
Oh, West Point. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And it's more, I think it's more so just being in an environment of people who are always looking to be better, looking to improve. I actually got introduced to the book from like some YouTube links that some guys that I was friends with like sent out in a group, because everybody was interested in learning more and investing, and he sent out some YouTube links, and then one of the links talked a lot about Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was like, oh, what is this? And so and that's kind of what started it. And I think it was just being in that environment of people wanting to be better and grow. I think I was like a junior junior that time, or my Cal year at West Point. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think that I was introduced to, I guess, financial literacy, and that's where I picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad too, while I was in like a college environment. So
Yeah.
I didn't really enjoy college. I mean, of course, I enjoy the party and stuff like that, right? But as far as like just education wise, like I didn't really
Yeah.
care too much about what I was learning. I think the real education from college is being around like-minded individuals, or finding a group of individuals, like-minded individuals, and then kind of getting that different type of education, right? You can be exposed to different types of people, man. That's really cool. It's interesting to hear that we have some synergies there.
Absolutely.
So why West Point, man?
It's tough, man, because honestly, like I was focused on going to school and playing football, and like that was my whole focus. And I, for whatever reason, I got under recruited. I think because I was 5'10" and played quarterback. So not a lot of schools wanted to take a risk on an athlete who didn't have any film at receiver or DB or anything like that. So long story short, I got under recruited at a lot of Division I AA schools. The only like legitimate offer that I had that was Division I-A was West Point. I could have gone to University of Maryland, but I would have had a partial scholarship or something like that. So I was looking for a full ride, and I had other opportunities to do so. They just weren't at the level I wanted. So when West Point was the only one left standing at that level, I was like, you know what, let me take a look. And I also had a lot of people chirping in my ear that were kind of outsiders, but telling me like, oh, you got offered by West Point. There would be no other option for my kid. And I heard that like 3 or 4 times, and I was like, what are you talking about? I got to figure this out, right? So I did some research, and I really I saw the type of people that they produced, and I was like, I don't know what it is about the school. I have no idea. I honestly didn't want to go to the military, but I was like, there's something about the school that offers me an opportunity that I'll probably never have again. So let me go ahead and just lean more into it. And after I did, honestly, I was just like, I think this just makes the most sense for my life, regardless of how many years in the military I do, regardless of what happens with football. Like in terms of my life, I thought that was the best opportunity for me. And honestly, I still stand by that to this day.
Excellent, man. Excellent, man. So you got in West Point, started playing football. We were talking a little offline. You kind of told me in your bio as well, you're playing broken like for your last 2 years, man. What's up with that?
Yeah. So I tore my ACL on my right knee in the spring game of my freshman year, going into my sophomore year. So I missed pretty much that whole season. And my junior year during training camp, I was finally recovered, feeling great. What I thought was a great camp. And I hurt my knee again in the same knee. And at the time, I didn't get an MRI. I asked for one. I didn't get one. And I rehabbed. They said my knee felt stable. So they just rehabbed me for about a month or so. I missed that time, but then I came back my junior year, played my senior year as well. And I had some pain, but I was like, I can overcome it. It is what it is, and I'll figure it out later. And honestly, I think deep down, I was kind of afraid because I knew if it was something serious that I wouldn't have been able to, I probably would have ended my career, and so I didn't want to lose out on any opportunities. So, but once I commissioned, I was still at West Point as an intern, and I was like, what, something's really not right. Like this is year 3. We're going into this and I'm still struggling with certain things, and I finally did get the MRI, and I had a really bad meniscus tear and a torn ACL and the only time that it happened that I hurt my knee was that one time my junior year. So I was like, that means that the last 2 years I played on a torn ACL, and it's pretty crazy. And yeah.
That's wild, man. That's wild. So you found out like right after you commissioned, and then assuming you went to what was the next steps after that?
Yes. So I still went to Bullock. I finished Bullock. I didn't. I was like, I'm going to try to push through it as much as I can. And I also wanted to get out into the Army because I just was honestly tired of the being in West Point at that point, being there I went to prep school. So over 5 years, if you include my time at prep school and as an athletic intern, I was just like, I need to go see something else. It's time. Right. So I got out in the Army. I was like, all this preparation to be a platoon leader, let me go at least try to do it. And I did it. But I had surgery about 6 or 7 months into my platoon leader time. And then like a couple months after that, they pretty much gave me a med board. They started a med board process after my surgery.
Okay. And what was that process like? I'm really interested in that because there's a lot of soldiers, and I know you probably know this as well. We kind of suffer through some injuries, right? And sometimes we don't get it checked out based off of, maybe senior leaders saying you just suck it up, or maybe just that internal drive in ourselves that says, hey, just suck it up and I'm going to keep pushing, right? What was that process? I mean, experience, now that you've been through that experience, right? And you went through that. What was that process like for you? And do you got any advice for anybody that's going through it?
I mean, I just really say, like, for anybody that's going through it, look deep within yourself and say, like, is it worth it? Is it worth not being able to run around with your kids, or not being able to do any physical activity at some point in time if you're going through something that's serious because of whatever the Army is going to put you through with ruck marching and running and all that stuff? Is it worth risking your physical health for for a military career? And if it is, great, by all means. And if you think you can push through it, and at the end of however long you plan to be in, great. But if not, like, I just say, like, I look back and they took out like a large portion of my meniscus, so I was at very minimal cartilage and cushion in my knee, in my joint. And if I continue to try to push forward, I could have fought my med board and said, no, keep me in, but at what cost, right? Like, if I'm ruck marching, I'm doing, long distance running, which already hurt me to begin with before my surgery, and after my surgery, I was in a lot of pain too. And it was like, if I continue to do that, what's that look like for me long term? So for me, I just, I really just, again, made a life decision. Like, I don't think this makes sense. And they're offering me an opportunity to essentially pursue my passion in real estate. I just thought all encompassing and made the most sense for me. And I encourage anybody to do that, whether it's to get in or stay out. If you're in a situation where you're physically hurt and you have an opportunity to potentially get out on a med board, that's what I encourage them to do. And it did take a lot of me sucking it up, because I'm always the type to, like, kind of push through it. But it was just like, at the end of the day, I got to do what's best for me. Because honestly, I love, I enjoyed my time in the Army. It didn't necessarily, I knew the Army wasn't going to do what's best for me. The Army's going to do what's best for the Army, right? So, but yeah, that's what I would say. And then as far as, like, PT or rehab or surgeries, I definitely encourage you to take advantage of all of it, because that's the only way you're going to get better. And if you're fighting through something, go get checked out. Make sure you get it checked out, because at the end of the day, again, your leadership's going to allow you to just push through it through PT training, whatever. And if you're not taking care of yourself, it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the key thing. Make sure you take care of yourself at the end of the day, and then weigh that long-term solution, man. Like, what's best for you and your family. But definitely, at the very least, if you're gonna push through it, make sure you at least get it on paper, because I'm seeing a lot of people that are getting out, and they're trying to get certain percentages based off of how they actually feel. But because they've sucked it up for so long and just kind of pushed through it, didn't go anywhere, it makes it very, very hard to plead a case that, hey, I got hurt literally 15 years ago or something like that.
Yep.
And, my back's messed up, and, you've never said anything, right? There's no medical record behind any of this. So it makes it very, very hard to get certain percentages, especially when you're getting out. So I know we went kind of on a tangent right there, but I know a lot of our listeners are, kind of struggle through that, and we'll go through that at some point in time, being injured in general. Right. So, so got to West Point, you get to Fort Lewis, you do some PL time, you do your med board, get med boarded out, and then you get into real estate. Why real estate? And what did that look like for you? What was that whole transition from, hey, I got a full-time job here, and now I'm taking this leap and I'm getting out, and I'm, as a real estate agent and professional, you're pretty much an entrepreneur. Like, there's no like set income, right? So you're going from getting paid on the 1st and 15th to, like, hey, I got to get out there and eat for myself, right? What was that like?
Sure. Well, I kind of skipped over the whole start of real estate as an agent. And so even as an investing, so I purchased 2 properties, me and my dad in my hometown in 2018. Between the two of us, this property is super cheap out there. So we bought 2 properties as rental properties. And at that point in time, I kind of ran out of money to do anything else. So I was like,
So
yeah, I have a little bit of cash. Go ahead.
really quick, where was this
Yeah.
at? And then what time frame were you in as far as, are you saying you were in the military still when you did this, or you were like at West Point, or so
Yep.
kind of walk us through that.
Yeah. So I was actually at Bullock. I was in the
Okay.
Army in 2018. And I was so I got out at the end of 2019. So
Okay.
December of 2019. So just to provide a little framework. So for a timeline. So I bought those properties in May of 2019 or 2018 with my dad in my hometown in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And then so we bought them remote, had a property manager, all that stuff. And then I got to Tacoma, Washington in June 28th, 2018. And I was trying a bunch of different things because at that point I had basically invested all my money into this one property. I had no more money left over, and I really wasn't making a lot of money as a second lieutenant. So I was like, man, I need to make some shake. Like I got to do something. I tried wholesaling, and back then like there was not a lot of information on wholesaling. So like I was reading some very vague information. That was a struggle. Couldn't figure it out. So I was like, all right, scrap this idea. Then I tried the Uber. And I had gotten a reckless driving for going a little over the speed limit in Virginia a couple of years ago. And so I was like, man, like I can't go do Uber. I don't know what to do. And I was actually sitting down with another broker who I was meeting with at the time. And I was trying to figure out like what my next steps were. And he brought up the idea that I should go get my broker's license in Washington. And so like, and this is like at the end of July. And so I remember I reached out to some people during that time and I was like, hey, like, I actually still have a screenshot of it. I was like, hey, who has within a West Point real estate network? I was like, who has any experience or information on being a broker while still in the Army? And a bunch of people reached out to me and really encouraged me to do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So it took me 17 days from the day that I started started the course to pass the course and pass the test and become licensed. So I showed up in, January 28th, and I was a licensed broker in September 5th, 2018.
Jeez.
And so, so I was still in the Army pretty much, trying to build up my real estate broker business. And again, I didn't know if I was going to stay in Washington. At that point in time, I didn't know what was going to, if I was going to get med boarded or not. I didn't even have my surgery on the horizon at that point in time. So I was just like, I'm just winging it. I'm just going after it and it'll work itself out. And sure enough, it did. So in 2018, I only sold one house. In 2019, my whole year I was a platoon leader, I sold 29 homes. And then I got out in December and I was able to go. And after selling 29 houses and the vast majority being in the latter half of the year, I was like, you know what, I have a lot of momentum. I'm okay. I built up myself a little bit to be comfortable with getting out and going full time in real estate. And although I was nervous, I kind of I took a bet on myself. And so 2020, first year full time in real estate, I sold 61 houses as a solo agent, and I started flipping houses that year too.
My God, awesome! What a story. So let's dissect that a little bit, man, because
Sure.
I absolutely love that, especially it's a pretty common side hustle, right? For a lot of soldiers and enlisted officers, regardless of what it is, to serve full time and also be a realtor, right? Usually
Sure.
it's not done at I'm selling 26 houses type deal, but that's phenomenal. I love how you did that. Test the waters while you're still in. You already know you're getting out. You go ahead and test the waters on the back end. That's essentially kind of like was your transition, right?
Exactly.
And then you got out and went full tilt. But I want to back up just a little bit because you mentioned you bought your first rental property back in your hometown in PA, right? Or maybe that's near your hometown in PA, with your dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? Because we often look at buying rental properties or buying something, we have to do it all by ourselves, right? Sometimes we might get help with from a parent or something like that, but usually it's very, very minimal help. The way that you phrased it, it seemed like you guys kind of went in a partnership, right? And bought it.
Mhm.
What was that like for you? Why back home? What was, can you give us a breakdown of what that deal looked like and, just a little information?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, it was probably one of my worst investments that I made in my life. Um, and I don't think really either of us knew exactly what we were doing. We are kind of just getting into it. And it's the only investment we made together to this date. But I mean, it was a learning experience. At the time when we first started, we were cash flowing, and then some issues came up and some things that we overlooked with multifamily, such as like who pays the utilities. That's not something that I ever heard of. So like I didn't know. I was like, oh, okay, we pay utilities, but whatever, it can't be that much, right? And yeah, so we ended up losing money even on a sale in the back end. Issues popped up and we lost money, and it wasn't the best investment, but it was a learning experience for sure. And I've actually since then I haven't done a single partnership. Everything else has been just myself.
No issues there, man. But
Yeah,
I love those stories, man, because that's where you learn all your stuff from, right? Like that's where you learn
exactly.
everything from. Just like you said, utilities. I didn't know. That's kind of area specific. Some areas it's very, very common for everybody to for the owner to pay the tenants, and in some areas it's very, very common to be separate utilities, right? So, based off that deal alone, can you give us like just a lesson learned, one on partnership, and then two on like, for the first time investor out there, it's like, hey, I'm going to go out there and do just one, a couple things that you learned from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for partnership, it's not that I'm cold on partnership or like, it didn't sour me and my dad's relationship at all, but it was just, I think just being super clear on what you're doing, and then at least one of y'all have to know what's going on. Because if both of you guys, if you're in a partnership and neither of you guys fully understand what's happening, there's a lot of risk involved that it can just make things worse. And I think that's really what it came down to, is that we didn't have a clear picture of what was going to happen or what to expect, or how to mitigate certain things. And so that's pretty much what I would recommend, is just at least one of you guys know what's going on. We had clear expectations up front and we split everything mostly 50-50, but at the same time, it was like, neither of us had the experience. So if you ever do a partnership, I definitely recommend at least somebody have that experience.
Okay.
And then also another thing I didn't even bring up. So before we bought that property, we were actually under contract to flip a house in Florida. And I was trying this whole remote investing thing, like Brandon Turner and all those guys say, right? And so we were under contract to buy a house in Florida, and we ended up losing $1,000. That was our earnest money, but for the deal. But what that introduced to me was hard money and how that worked. The deal fell through at closing because I wasn't given a clear picture. And it was supposed to be me and my dad too, but we weren't given a clear picture of how the loan itself worked. And so whenever on closing day, the lender finally told me how everything worked with like loan to value and percentages. And he sent me a spreadsheet. And that's how I learned about what earnest money was, or hard money was, and how hard money loans worked. And so fast forward, 2.5 years later, when I do my first flip, I was able to project everything. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew how it all worked. So another lesson in failure teaches you lessons to prepare you down a lot, especially in real estate.
Yeah, big time, man. They're not L's, they're lesson. What the L stands for, lesson learned, right?
Exactly.
But that's awesome, man. So so you did it, you tried to do your first flip out of state. I'm just curious, what part of Florida?
It's a city called Palm Coast, Florida. It's like 30 minutes north of. It's actually like 45 minutes south of Jacksonville.
Yeah, I know Palm Coast. Yeah. So okay, cool. And then got into it. You guys did a multifamily deal back in your hometown. That didn't go that well, but you learned a lot of lessons out of it. And then you got your real estate license, got your brokerage, you started selling homes, got out. Walk us through the next steps, man. What happened after that?
Yeah, so in 2019, I actually bought my first house with my VA loan. And then just 11 months later, I bought a house, like literally another single family house, literally right across the street from the first house, 0 down as well, closing costs paid for, all that good stuff. And so I did that. And then I've actually since then bought a third house, now with my VA loan, conventional, but both the homes that I bought with my VA loan, they're both rental properties and I still own them to this day. And so that's another powerful tool to use as well. And so I've really leveraged that, and I'm about to do it again. So we can get into that in a second. But yeah, I started flipping houses in 2020. I bought my first one in September. I can't. I think I've done like 10 or something since then. So it's been pretty good. I've had some really good flips. I had a couple that burned me, but for the most part, I've done really well with flipping. And it's been a pretty awesome experience. And I learned a lot about houses and all that and structuring deals and all that kind of stuff as well.
Has being a broker helped you get, I'm assuming you're getting some off-market deals to do the flips, right? Or maybe they're just coming from networks, or maybe they're just coming from listings yourself and you're buying them yourself. But either way, how has, getting your broker's license helped you in that regard as far as flipping?
Well, I would say I'd say it helped a lot. And the thing is that I'm full time in real estate. I know the market better than 99% of the population. If I see it, like you tell me an address of a house in Tacoma, and you tell me the square footage and the bed bath count, I'm probably going to tell you what it's worth. And so whenever I have opportunities cross my desk, 9 times out of 10 they're bad, and I'm like, I tell the wholesalers, like, your ARV is way off, or whatever. But the ones that are good, that they undervalue the ARV, or they undervalue how good of a deal it is, I hop on them quickly and I just don't say anything. It's happened about 3 or 4 times that's happened to me, and I've been able to really do well with those ones, just because I can immediately like look at an address and I'm like, whoa, hold up, this is a good one, and then I just go all in. And so and I buy it. I even had one time another broker sent me a deal. And when he sent me a deal, he told me what he thought his ARV was. I went and walked the property, and I was like, oh, you're like $50,000 off, like lower. And so I told him, hey, because he was conducting an off-market transaction for the seller. That's what the seller wanted to do with a bunch of investors. I told him, hey, no matter what anybody offers you, I'll pay like $5,000 more. And I did, and I bought it, and it was my best flip to this day. I didn't tell him why I said that, but I told him, whatever anybody offers you, I'll pay like $5,000 more.
But the cool thing about that is
it ended up working out.
The cool thing about that, though, is the wholesaler is already factored in their profit margin in it anyway. So even if you're like, oh, that,
exactly,
you can make $50,000 off of it, they're already factoring it. They're going to make 10, 15, 20,000 either way. So they're giving you the price that to hit their profit margin, if that makes sense. So not really ripping anybody off, but that's awesome. That's awesome. And it seems like you're doing like a whole like vertical integration play. I like that you're not, some realtors will just only focus on being a realtor, right? Some realtors you talk to, if you guys don't know, there's some realtors out there that have never owned a rental property, or some of them have never even bought a house, which, they might be saving up for it or something like that. But a lot of them that I've dealt with don't really know anything about investing at all, right? Which is very surprising. Have you run into that? Have you run into that a lot in Tacoma, or like in your area, in your market?
Oh yeah, man. Real estate's a money grab to a lot of people.
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think they're just, like, I would think that if I'm immersed in real estate, whatever side of the transaction I'm on, that, I'd be wanting to take part in this, right? Like as an investor, right?
Yeah.
So why do you think that is?
Well, I've learned that not everybody's wired like us, man. The first and foremost, like, not everybody's wired to be, always thinking about how to improve, which ways in which you can do better, and just like go all in on something. A lot of people, they think going all in is just going all in on being a real estate agent and maybe having a team one day, cashing a lot of checks, selling $1 million houses. And while that's fun and that's great, and I have a team, I built a team, and I'm trying to grow it. That's not just my only focus, because ultimately, like, I got in real estate because of the investment side. And also, like, from what I've seen, there's a lot of people, the barrier of entry to get your real estate license is really easy. I mean, I got it in 17 days, literally. If, most people, it takes them a month or two to get their license, and they go past the test and now they're licensed. And we have all these, thousands and thousands of brokers in Tacoma. And, not a lot of them do a lot of business, but they see it as, oh, this guy's in real estate, he does really well. And, oh, you're great with people. So you're funny and charismatic, so you can go sell houses. And it's like, and they never really take the time to really understand real estate, like, on a deeper level. And so I think that's really what it comes down to. And some people, they do, and they really go all in on it. And those are the ones that are the most successful because, yeah, they sell a lot of homes probably, but, they own a lot of homes too. And so that's really where the wealth comes in. I look at real estate as this is my business, my job, my profession in terms of sales, but in terms of, building generational wealth and set myself up to where I don't have to work anymore if I don't want to, that's the investment side. That's what I'm striving for on the other end as well. And so, and also, I think helping other people really understand what they're doing and what they're trying to do, and honestly, doing exactly what I do. Like I'm not withholding any secrets, and I don't tell any lies. So if I tell you I'm doing something, I'm doing it, and I'll tell you how I do it. And if you decide to take my advice and listen to me and work with me, great, let's go do it. If not, I wish you the best either way. But all I can do is tell you what I've done, and then really just hope that if you listen, it can make you successful too. And I've helped a few people do it, and everyone that's listened to me has been pretty successful in their efforts.
Yeah, man. And sometimes it's, going back to like, your upbringing, sounds like it's somewhat similar to mine as far as like there not being a lot of people around you to even introduce you to the concepts of financial literacy or the concept of real estate or wealth building or any of that, right? So it seems like you're in it and you're giving that back to other people, which is awesome. And I'm sure that's super satisfying to now be that person, to be able to actually take that information, give it out, and then see them flourish as well, right?
Exactly. Oh yeah, no, it's really cool. I mean, see people go from being essentially a broke lieutenant or or a soldier, whatever, or they just got the military and they just got their job and they don't know, exactly how they want to buy a house and, potentially start, turn it into rental properties, and guiding them and showing them how to do it without having, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a crazy expensive market is really cool, because it's all about numbers. It's making it work. And then it's just honestly just taking a risk and jumping into it. But if you make the calculated risk, you're going to be all right. And honestly, that's what I'm here for, because I've done it myself. I know what to look for. I know how to guide you in doing things. And, but that's why people trust me, is because I'm open and honest and transparent.
Love it. That's why we created this podcast, you guys. It's just to bring other people on, share the stories, and hopefully you can gain a little bit of insight and start your own journey. So that's really what I love about what bringing people like you on and hearing your story, man. So
for sure.
Getting into the you mentioned the VA loan earlier, right? And you've taken advantage of that. And speaking about soldiers in general, and other people like starting their journey. What about the VA loan is so attractive and can help other soldiers like really build wealth? And do you have any like, I don't know, like a game plan for them, like a simple game plan for someone that's trying to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends. I've had people that come to me and they want to build a rental portfolio and build their empire, and then have other people that just want to buy a house and they just want to do it in the best way and provide housing for their family, and that's it, right? So either side of either end of the spectrum, if you have a VA loan, I think that's the best product to start with. It's the easiest product to start with, and I think it's pretty simple. So obviously you have zero down, but you don't. The VA loan is $0 down, but that's not $0 out of pocket. You do have to pay closing costs, typically $8,000 to $10,000, depending on your lender and the fees that they charge and all that stuff, and the price point. And so, I mean, from there, I mean, I recommend if you have the savings, if you have about $10,000 and you want to buy a house, you have the income to support it, I'd say go ahead and do it. Even if you don't have the $10,000, or you have it, you want to save it maybe towards improvements or whatever else, I recommend that you honestly get with a realtor that knows how to really navigate a market and negotiate closing costs for you. When you go and look at a house and you love it, you want to, you can get your closing costs covered, but it has to be by the seller. So you have to negotiate that into the price and into the offer. And so I've helped a lot of people do that. And I think right now with interest rates rising, this is the time to do it again. We've been getting people closing costs covered left and right. As long as, that's what they want. And so I recommend go ahead and doing that. And if you want to create turn your VA loan into a rental, understand that there's no limit on the number of homes you can have in your VA loan. There's only a limit on how much you can have finance under your VA loan. And even with that, there's a caveat too. So I don't want to get too far in detail, but here in Pierce and King County in Washington, it's all county dependent. They have what's called the VA county loan limit, and so in Pierce and King County is 891,000. If you buy a house, in your first year for, let's say, $400,000, that means you have $491,000 left over in your entitlement for zero down. So that means that you can go buy a house for $491,000, zero down, the same way you just did the $400,000 house. However, if you want to go over that amount, you only have to pay 25% of the difference. So let's say you want to buy a house for $591,000. That's $100,000 more than what you have left in your entitlement, and your down payment is only $25,000. So, and then whenever you start to understand that, you can now, think down the line. So what I did was I maxed out my VA loan in back-to-back years. And then I waited because I figured I wasn't going to be able to buy my VA loan for quite some time. But then just this year, I refinanced. You can only do this one time. I refinanced the first house I bought my VA loan out of VA and into conventional. And then I freed up a certain amount of entitlement. And now I have enough to go and purchase again. And so I'm actually in the middle of doing that right now. I'm buying another house. So, and if you can really, be patient and think strategically through this, and then also understand that, your first house isn't your forever home, especially when you're building a rental portfolio. You think with the end in mind, you purchase a house that'll be a good rental, and then you move on from there once you hit about 12 months.
Yeah, man, nail on the head, dude. Like, you mentioned a couple of great things there. And I think the most important thing you mentioned was begin with the end in mind, right? Realize how this factors into your long-term goals, and also understand that this is not your forever home. You're going to be living in this house for maybe 3 to 5 years, right? So if you're planning to turn this into a rental property, it would make sense for you to ensure that it cash flows when you buy it. Like, it's going to cash flow as a rental when you buy it, right? And it makes sense for your long-term goals. I love that. I'm glad you really mentioned that and kind of honed in on that.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, the VA loans is an excellent starting place for anyone trying to start their rental portfolio. Obviously, if you want to buy a primary residence, that works as well. But if you're thinking strategically, just like Javon said, you can end up really in 3 duty stations. If they're in certain duty stations, you can end up with 12 units, right? So you can buy a 4 unit in your first duty station, then you can move, rent that out, buy another 4 unit, live in 1 unit, then move, then buy another 4 unit, right? So, I mean, at the end of 3 PCSs, you could potentially have up to 12 units, right? You can be cash flowing on all of them, living in one unit, living in 1 unit in your current duty station, right? Renting the other 3 out, living rent free, and keeping all of your BAH, right? So these are the strategic moves to build wealth that anyone in the service can take advantage of, right? And then another one, for those of you guys who don't know, I'm a dual military couple. I'm in and my wife's in. So we switch who use the VA loan. So just like the availability, there's no loan caps right now. So you can, if you qualify for a $2 million purchase using the VA loan, then you can still get back, you can still use the VA loan, right? So we can buy multiple homes. I bought the first 2 houses, right, with my VA loan. Well, my wife can buy the next 2 houses with the VA loan, and that eligibility doesn't change. So just like Gervon said, in his county, I think $891,000. Well, that'd be $891,000 for me, and then also $891,000 for my wife. So, I mean, if you think about these things strategically, you can really not only make a good living while you're in the military, but also start generating that wealth, that long-term wealth. So I love it, man. It's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So you've been really going hard on not just being a realtor, right? You said like 60 something, I think. He sold like 60 something houses. And that's actually crazy, because I know in Tacoma, those houses aren't cheap up there. Like, we're talking about like $500,000-$600,000 homes. I imagine. So closing on 60 something homes, I mean, that's super impressive, man. But then on top of that, also doing the flips, and also, giving back and doing everything else. So how are you managing all this? I mean, do you have a family, or like, how do you manage all this time?
Yeah. So I do have a family. I have a wife and a young daughter. She's just turned 1 a couple months ago. So, obviously that time is sacred. But after 2020, my wife got pregnant in 2020, and towards the end of the year, and as I was just running myself ragged, and I was working so hard and such long hours because I was a solo agent. I didn't have an assistant, and I had essentially a watered down transaction coordinator who was offered through my brokerage that honestly didn't do much. I didn't have a lot of help. It was just all me. And so 2021, at the beginning of the year, I decided I was going to start a team. And that's been a whole learning process in its own. But at the time, I hired an assistant. I brought on a couple agents. I burned through a few agents, and I hired a few agents. But I think I've finally got a good portion of it figured out now. And so now, I'm lucky enough that I don't necessarily have to work the super long weekends and go show all the houses anymore because I have a team. I was able to delegate, outsource, and use other people's time and efforts to be able to, essentially do what I continue to do. And it's actually allowed us to grow as a team, especially this year because last year was setting the foundation. So I didn't really grow in terms of transaction size last year. But this year I have, we're selling more houses than I've ever sold before. And, and I'm able to, have more people do it and essentially create a career for them as well. So it's been really, really awesome. And just growing that team, delegating and being able to outsource, it just frees up so much of my time to be able to spend more time with my family and then also focus a little bit on investing as well.
I know different states are set up different ways when it comes to realtors and like brokers. How is Washington set up? Are you the broker in charge, or is it like, hey, you're working on a team, like you guys just have a team together of realtors? I'm just curious.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know how it is in other states, but here, in order to be a team leader, I'm directly responsible for the people on my team. And so since I'm the team leader, I do have to have my managing broker's license. Okay. So here in Washington, they call all, basically your basic real estate agent license, they call you brokers. And then in order to be essentially what in other states would be considered an actual broker that runs an office or a team or whatever, we call that managing broker. So now I'm a managing broker. You have to have at least 3 years of experience to be that. But you also have to, in order to be a team leader, you have to have your managing broker's license. So I have my managing broker's license, but I do fall under a brokerage. I don't own my own brokerage.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's how it works in Georgia. That's what I was asking. I know it works in North Carolina a little differently as well. But yeah. So that's interesting. So you got a team together. What does your team look like, and how did you like go about building them? And also, I guess how much did your PL time or like your I guess military experience help in managing and building and creating that team?
For sure. So I unfortunately for the longest didn't really lean in too much on my experience as a leader and being a platoon leader to build a team. And so I think that was my biggest mistake. But since then I have, and just to understand it, being a little bit more, I don't want to say authoritative or like using my power, but just really being a little bit more strict has helped me a lot with growing my team. I was too lax, I think, at the beginning, but now I'm a little bit more strict. I'm definitely setting, more standards and making sure that we're on the same page and have more uniformity and all that good stuff. That I feel like I take directly from being a platoon leader and an officer. And then also just understanding how to delegate. That's been huge for me, so right now I have an admin and an assistant. Admin assistant is just one person for right now. I do want to bring somebody else on. I had 2 agents underneath me, but right now I just have one. I have somebody else who's going to be newly licensed joining the team. And then I also am in a process of figuring out how I'm going to structure, but adding on referral directors. So what I'm looking for there is, and I already have one guy joining. He's actually a forward. And so you have to be licensed. You have to be an agent. I'm really only looking for people in Washington that want to make some extra side income, but all they do is refer business to the team. And so they get a referral check every time they refer somebody. So it's good side income from them. They're not necessarily out selling homes, but if there's somebody who has a good network, has people that have people that are wanting to buy and sell, they can refer them to us and we'll take care of them. The other agent on my team is actually my classmate from West Point. He played baseball. So that's been a really cool dynamic. And honestly, I'm just looking to continue to build it out. But I'm being very selective in who I hire and who I interview. I'm not just interviewing anybody.
I mean, no, that makes complete sense. If you're going to work with them, it makes sense.
Exactly.
You actually kind of like what like who you work with, right? And it's awesome that you have
Yeah,
the ability to make those decisions, right? Where like, hey,
for
I'm not going
sure.
to work with anybody I don't like, right? But it's interesting
Exactly.
that you say like, you at first you weren't bringing lessons learned or like, things that you learned in the military over to the civilian world. Because I've dealt with the same thing, man. Like sometimes
Yeah.
when you put just like your regular civilian clothes on, it's a weird switch, right? And you're like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm a civilian now. All right, now and I put the uniform on. All right, now I'm a soldier, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's been times where I'm like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna figure this out, and I'm like, well, why don't I just do what I do in my regular job, right? So it's kind of
Exactly.
it's kind of
Yeah.
weird, man. So have you I guess what was the thing that made you switch or helped you switch?
Um, I think just realizing that after I burned through 3 agents, and I'm like, neither of these people, a lot of them weren't good fits, and I'm just like, and there's just some things that came up, and I was just like, man, I really need to be like more diligent on not only who I hire, but also like setting the expectations. And I had a couple incidents where if I had just set the expectations clearly from the gate, I would have never run into this issue. But because I didn't, I didn't even have an SOP operations manual. I didn't have any of that. But now I have it. And anytime I bring somebody on, they know what the expectations are, and it's pretty clear. We have processes and systems for everything. Well, mostly everything now. And I've been slowly implementing more and more. I'm always hungry to learn how to implement that. And so, for me, it was just, I think, just part of it, not knowing exactly what to look for, not knowing exactly what to do or what to implement. And then also the other part of it was just like, again, I was like, man, I'm not in the military anymore. I don't have to do this. I don't have to, but it's kind of strange how it actually, the things I learned and the skills that I learned apply almost directly into what I do now. And so it's like, all right, maybe I do need to lean on this a little bit more than I thought.
Yeah, man, that's crazy, dude. And what branch were
Yeah,
you? And what branch were you?
I was ordnance.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
yeah,
So it's wild, man. It really is wild. I laugh sometimes when I find myself in predicaments like even something as simple as this, like running this podcast
mhm,
and running the YouTube channel and doing things like that. I'm like, oh well, this I can be doing exactly what I'm doing over here and do the same thing here on the civilian
exactly.
side, and it still applies. So I love that,
Yeah,
man. Um, but yeah, so I enjoyed your story, man. I really enjoyed your story. I think there's a lot of lessons learned through everything you've done so far. What's the end goal? Like, what are you trying to work towards? I know generational wealth, but that's really vague.
yeah.
Like, do you have like a set target? Are you looking for like net worth? Are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for like what specifically is your goal here?
Um, I don't know that I have a clear end goal. And I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm still young. I'm only 28, so like I feel like it's kind of hard to say, oh, what's my end goal? Because I don't know that I'll ever have an end goal, because at the end of the day, like I can't really see myself just like retiring and riding off into the sunset and just disappearing from the world. So for me, I think my end goal is, or my goal, my general goal is really just to help as many people as I possibly can, make the biggest impact that I possibly can. And, teach as many people, or at least give tools or insight, or, affect people, and as many people as I can, to where they're provided resources that allow them to get out of financial literacy, if that's what they choose. Because at the end, that's one thing I've also learned, is that if people don't want to learn about being better financially, they're not going to, and you can't force anybody to do that or convince them to do that. And so I learned that the hard way. But yeah, I think so. I think that's my goal. I'm not, as far as my team goes, I definitely have a goal of having about 5 to 7 agents underneath me, people that are out there killing it and crushing it. And so, I'm in the very early stages, but it took me a long time to even figure that out. So I'm in the very early stages of starting that out, but I do believe I'll get there soon enough. And then as far as property, there's the investment side. So I actually want to be a developer. Like I want to develop multifamily properties and hold them as rentals. That's pretty much that's what I'm working towards now. I'm just trying to build the foundation with building single family homes. And so that's another reason why I took my foot off the brake when it comes to flipping, is because I want to really hone in on developing property. And I think that's the way in which I want to go. And in terms of my highest and best use, I think, I see other people that figured it out, and I'm like, if they figured it out, I know I can. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
That's awesome, man. I like that. I've given it some thought too about like trying to go on the development route and stuff. I'm curious why development, and if you do go that route, what are you planning to do to like start, I guess, start along that path or along that journey?
I think development, because I look at flipping, and although like I can just continue to do it and crush it just like I always have, I just honestly I'm kind of tired of it. And I also know that there's just better and more efficient avenues and ways in which I can generate a lot more wealth in one deal than I can in flipping. Making $100,000 on a flip is like honestly unheard of. Or if it's not, maybe not unheard of, but it's a little bit more, it's a lot more rare. Whereas, I can generate $1 million plus worth of wealth for not only me, but other people in a development deal, especially if I bring them together. If I'm the one that figures it out, I know I can go raise the money. I know I can go do everything I need to do. But, when you look at the bigger projects, that's the way that you really bring, opportunities and value to other people. And then also, I'm able to really accelerate what I'm doing on the cash flow side and on the investment side, and building generational wealth as well. And it's just a challenge, at the end of the day. Like I feel like I figured out flipping and I kind of mastered it, and I honestly got kind of bored with it too. So it's like at this point I'm like, I think I need a little bit more of a challenge. And so development is just, so far it's a hell of a challenge. And there's not a whole lot of information out there. It's not like I can go read a book on how to develop. I mean, you can, but it's just so different, and there's so many different nuances and factors, and it's been interesting.
Yeah, it's a little different down to the county level. Like you gotta, like I
feel like even.
Yeah, I feel like development, you legit have to know people, and even especially like you almost have to kind of politic even with like city officials, because they're the ones that have to basically bless off on you building whatever you want to build, right? Especially if you're talking about going to like the commercial space and stuff like that. So that's interesting, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you crush that. We'll have to bring you back on in like a couple years, or whenever you get it figured out, which I'm sure it won't be that long if you got your real estate license in 17 days. But man, so that's awesome. So like kind of wrapping up here, if we got soldiers out here listening to this, right? And they're seeing what you're doing and they want to kind of do something similar. What's one piece of advice that you would give to those listening?
The one piece of advice is, I would say, just, really be stubborn and what other people's advice that are deterring you from doing something. If you have something that you want to do and you want to do it, don't let your platoon sergeant or your platoon leader or your commander tell you shouldn't do it, or to discourage you, or even, your colleagues, because deep down inside, 9 times out of 10, they're just, they're insecure, or they're resenting what you're doing. And so, prime example, when I got my real estate license, other lieutenants looked at me funny. They were like, why are you, like, pretty much like, sorry, I don't know if we can swear, but pretty much like looking at me as if I'm a shitbag, because that's the common military term, because I'm doing something outside the Army. And as soon as I'm done with my duties, I'm going and showing houses and selling houses. And, they didn't understand it, but I think now they do. And, looking back on it, if I had listened to them, or honestly, I didn't ask my commander's permission, I just went and did it. And I was just like, my mentality is, I'm a grown man. You're not going to tell me if I can or can't go make some extra money. So if it doesn't interfere with my duties, I wasn't going to let it stop me from doing it. And so I encourage everybody else to kind of take that same path. If you have something you want to do, go after it. Don't let other people discourage you, no matter if they're in a position of power, or your colleague at work, or they think you're a shitbag in your unit. Like, don't be a shitbag, but definitely don't just not pursue something because you're afraid.
Yeah, the key thing there, you said, as long as it doesn't interfere with your duty. And I 100% agree, because obviously I've went through the same exact thing, man. I think anyone who's who has any kind of, entrepreneurial venture kind of goes through the same thing. And I think what it is that people cannot, if they can't see themselves doing it, then they can't see
Hmm.
other people doing it, right? So they
Hmm.
sometimes, inadvertently project their fears on you. And that's not just chain of command, that's family, that's friend, that's whoever, doesn't have the same vision that you have, right? So I think that's definitely important, especially on the Army side. If it's not going to interfere, if it's not interfering with what you're doing, then by all means go and pursue that passion, because a lot of times what I heard, at least when I first started, right? I remember flipping my first property, and I had a senior leader like, why are you doing that? You should focus on the Army, focus on the military career, da 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 da, all that stuff. And he's like, I don't even know how you have the time to do that. I'm like, I didn't say this, but in my head, I'm like, I know all you do is talk about football all day. So I know you watch Thursday night football, Monday night football, Sunday night football. Like you're watching
Yeah.
football all the time. You're going to games. You're doing all these stuff. Well, I choose not to do that, and I choose to take
Yeah.
that time that you're spending to do that. I'm spending on other things, that's more
Exactly.
fulfilling and in my eyes more proactive, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so so yeah, man. Like if you're listening out there, that's great advice. Excellent advice, man. Like go pursue that
Thank you.
passion, especially if it's not interfering with what you got going on, man. I love that advice. Love it.
For sure. For
So,
sure.
so we listened to your story, love your story, love the advice. How can our listeners get a hold of you if they want to find out more?
Um, I would just honestly direct them to my social media. I'm really active on there. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's all the same. It's at Gervon Simon. Perks of having a unique name. So you give me a follow, reach out to me there. I'm pretty proactive and checking my DMs and all that stuff. So yeah.
Excellent. And we'll put those links down below in the show notes, whether you listen to this on podcast or YouTube. They'll be down there. So make sure you go tap in with Javon. You'll probably start seeing the development stuff on there. And then shortly after that, maybe you'll see some multifamily development on there. I'm really excited
Yeah.
to see that. So, but thanks a
Thank you.
lot for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. Love the story. Love the information you gave out. Any parting advice or parting words?
Just go crush it. That's it. Go follow your passions and don't be afraid to do it. Go take massive action and do it.
Excellent. 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 All right. With that said, this is Dan Wynn signing off.